Hello, good evening. I'm Ajit Kumar Jha, uh, CEO of Power Pixar Channel, editor of the Public Global. And today we are going to pick up an international subject, and that is, the meeting that took place on Friday between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and the US President Donald Trump. And it was quite a meeting, by the way. In fact, there was a bitter clash between the two leaders. And mind you, the meeting was being held at the Oval Office. In fact, Zelensky, ever since Donald Trump has become the president for a second time, Zelensky wanted to meet Donald Trump, uh, and he wanted the meeting before Donald Trump met uh, Russian President Vladimir Putin. But this meeting was getting postponed because there were so many other issues to be sort of sort out. And finally, when the meeting took place, it ended in a disaster. Uh, so, what exactly transpired in that meeting, and why am I concluding that it ended in a disaster? And who are the gainers and losers from this sort of meeting between um, Zelensky and Trump? That is what we are going to analyze. But let's talk about the meeting a little bit. Uh, what exactly uh, what happened in the meeting was that um, Zelensky, in his mind, he wanted the US not to become soft on President Putin. He wanted the US to basically support Ukraine in the same manner that US under Joe Biden, the previous president, had done, which is basically they were supporting NATO, and the entire NATO was united in a way, and they were backing sort of Ukraine, especially the US, with billions of dollars of armament, of all kinds of other assistance. And there was this war was going on for the last more than 3 years now. And that war has cost not only Ukraine, almost 20% of Ukraine or even more is right now being held by Russia. A small chunk of Russia is also being held by Ukraine. Literally, hundreds of thousands of soldiers and civilians have died on both sides. In fact, President Trump pointed, rather rightly, I would argue, that if Zelensky keeps on harping on his point of carrying on the war and wanting support from the US president, that this situation would only lead, what he said, would only lead to a third world war like situation. And that is the fear. Many other countries, other than the NATO countries, feel the same, that this war should end. In fact, even Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he had told when he met Putin, he had mentioned that this is not an era of war, that somehow peace should prevail. And Donald Trump, despite the fact that he is not someone I admire too much, but on this issue, at least he seems to be brokering a peace between the two countries, because he realizes that this war has cost the world a great deal. Although NATO members and the Western press has been attacking Trump on that. They have been arguing that US has, in fact, one of the headlines in Financial Times London was that the US has become an enemy of the West. What they mean is Trump is just not agreeing with the NATO leaders on in backing this war between Ukraine and Russia and supporting Ukraine. So this change, this what I would call 180 degrees switch in Washington over support to Ukraine, which it was 100% under Biden, and Trump completely disagrees with Biden. He wants, in fact, he told Zelensky that, and by the way, he has talked to Putin. He has very good, Trump has very good relations with Putin. So he pointed out that Russia is ready for a deal. In fact, this point was also made by Trump when a day before yesterday, when he met Keir Starmer, the UK president, and he argued there as well, because Keir Starmer was saying, we are going to put our soldiers in the war now. In the past, remember, it was the Americans who were supporting. Most of the work was being done by the Americans. The Europeans were supporting, in a way, the entire European Union and the UK, which is not a member. They were all supporting Ukraine, but the kind of support that the US was doing, the kind of cost, the amount of billions of dollars that the US was putting, Europe was not exactly sort of putting that amount of money. They were just silent partners in a way. They were letting the Americans sort of fan the war here, because the US is supposed to be the leader of NATO. But Trump completely disagrees, as I said, and he told. In fact, there was an interesting discussion between Keir Starmer and Donald Trump, and Keir Starmer pointed out that we are going to use our UK troops in the war now. So Trump at one point asked Keir Starmer, "Are you sure you're going to? Are you sure you're going to win this war on your own without American support?" And obviously, the entire room where they were discussing it broke into a laughter. So, in a way, even if some of these European leaders are still committed to some extent, at least, on waging this war as it is going on between Russia and Ukraine, Trump completely wants to end it. And the reason that this meeting between Zelensky and Trump ended in a disaster is because of what Trump pointed out. Trump's position is the following: end the war because Russia is ready to make a deal right now, a peace deal. And in the peace deal, Trump wants the US and Ukraine to sign a deal of reconstruction of Ukraine. The revenues of that will come from where? It will come from oil, gas, and other minerals that Ukraine is filled with. So, in a way, Trump wants to make a business deal. He wants to earn, as he pointed out, billions of dollars, maybe trillions, from this deal, because the US would have access to the entire sort of mineral wealth of Ukraine. And that is, as I pointed out, oil, gas, and lots of rare sort of minerals as well, which is a big requirement for the top technology companies in the US. Now, right now, it seems that the deal is off the table, but this can't go on for long because Trump Trump gave him a warning that either you sign the deal and agree with a peace deal with Putin, or we Americans will withdraw. And if that were to take place, I don't think it is possible for Europe alone to be able to support Zelensky on its own. In fact, the European powers are being hurt quite a big deal. Starmer Keir Starmer, UK Prime Minister, as soon as he returned, he kind of cut this entire funds that he was spending on aid and other kinds of humanitarian help to different trouble spots in the world. He cut that in a drastic manner. Lots of people lost their jobs. And where is he putting that money? Into defense expenditure. He's increasing the defense budget of UK. And the idea is that he's going to put more troops on the ground and support, in this case, Zelensky's support Ukraine. The European powers still see Russia as a big enemy. They still want Ukraine. And the earlier position was they wanted Ukraine to be a member of the NATO. That is what Russia was opposing all the time. Russia was saying the moment Ukraine becomes a member of the NATO, NATO comes at the border of Russia, which threatens the security of Russia. And therefore, they had gone into war because for them, it was a question of survival. And that is something that the European powers, especially the NATO members, are not able to figure out. They kind of overlook the security aspects of Russia, which several other countries in the world which support Russia, and part of that, China certainly supports Russia, even India and Brazil and several BRIC countries, several countries in the third world, they have their sympathy for Russia because they feel that territorial integrity of Russia is very important, given the fact that if you remember the history, this was Soviet Union. And the way the Soviet Union broke and the way it was dismembered and it was literally cut, 1/3 of it came out of Russia. And now again, Russia feels threatened, or Putin at least feels that Russia is threatened by the NATO by using Ukraine as a proxy. So obviously this deal is not the last deal, because I feel that Ukraine doesn't really have a serious option left. Ukraine at some point has to go back to the negotiating table. Ukraine has to go back for peace efforts. Ukraine for a while will try and lobby with European leaders, but this war cannot continue successfully in favor of Ukraine with European support alone. The Europeans just don't have that kind of military muscle, nor do they have economic muscle that the US has. So finally, at the end, the gainer right now is not clear. Because Donald Trump wants a very different kind of deal that had worked in the past. If the deal works out as Donald Trump wants, which is a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia, then the big gainer would be Putin, because after all, most people would argue that the immediate aggressor was Putin. So if the war ends and he is not treated as a pariah, he is brought to the peace table, so he would be a great winner. The US would be a great winner in this case, US under Trump. Why? Because they would be, it would seem that they brokered the peace deal, and the fact that they would get a lot of money in billions and trillions of dollars from the peace deal with Ukraine. This 50% revenue allocation by Ukraine, 50% by US for reconstruction of Ukraine. All of this would go for American businesses, which would go into Ukraine to bring about the reconstruction. So the reconstruction industry, the defense industry, certain other industries connected with this entire sort of reconstruction effort would benefit enormously, as would the Americans. And hopefully the world will be a gainer, because this three or over 3 years of war between Russia and Ukraine, a war after the Second World War inside Europe, is something, as Donald Trump rightly pointed out, threatens at some point to become a third world war. And we have seen its impact on businesses, on stock markets plummeting all over the world in the last 3 years, everything being very volatile, and supply chains getting disrupted, all kinds of agriculture help that was going to Africa and several other parts of the third world getting affected. So the big loser, of course, will be Ukraine, at least not Ukraine as a country, but Zelensky, because he had become the hero in a way, propped up by NATO and by the US under Joe Biden. So his hero worship will be over. Him being the great hero fighting, David versus Goliath. He was the David, Putin was the Goliath. He was sort of fighting against Putin, the nationalist hero of Ukraine. That will end, and Ukraine will have to deal with the entire process with Russia in the future with peace negotiations rather than war, and the support it is getting from NATO and the US would end. But at this moment, that deal has not crossed through. The deal ended up, as I pointed out, in an open fight between Trump and Zelensky. In fact, the whole conflict was, in a way, getting sort of uh, ignited by Vice President Vance, who was telling Zelensky that you cannot come all the way to the Oval Office. We have invited you as a guest, and here you come, and you are fighting with President Trump. You are fighting with the hosts. Now, that shows that you have no respect for the United States. You have no respect for the peace negotiator. And Trump also seconded, saying that you don't respect us the way you are sort of attacking us. So the whole drama that took place in the Oval Office on Friday shows how serious this entire conflict is, and how important it is to end it for once and all. We will carry on and have many more programs on this issue in the future. Hope that this peace between Ukraine and Russia, between NATO and Russia, between NATO with the support of the US versus Russia, gets resolved once and for all. Thank you.